different keys to a godly, being a godly man, and different types of things and approaches to all of that. And this week and last week, and we'll continue this week, was keys to loving like Jesus. Keys to loving like Jesus. And Matthew 9:35 through 38, that was our kind of our key verses. So if somebody wants to read that, that's on the front of your thing. Do you need another one of these? Sure. All right. And if somebody wants to read that top verse there in the first page. Yeah, Matthew 9:35 through 38.
And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad, as sheep without no shepherd, having no shepherd.
Amen.
Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest.
Amen. And again, that's that's kind of the idea of this. And point number one, I'm not going to go through all the subpoints and everything, but point number one was the compassion of Jesus, and we looked at his compassion. And again, 36, but when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion. So again, what you look upon is where your heart will be. So if you're not looking at people and looking at certain things, you won't be moved. What moves you? And that's a very important thing when you're talking about people, or you're talking about living life as Jesus would. Where are your eyes? What moves you? He was moved with compassion, and that's why, because he looked at them as sheep having no shepherd. And then we see number two, the conviction of Jesus. And like I said, I'm not going to go back to all of the things, but the conviction of Jesus, and that was verse 37, where it says, Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. So he knows, hey, I got a heart. There's so many people that need it, but there's not enough workers. And he had a conviction to really, hey, we need to get to work. And hopefully you will have that same conviction as well, and to really just say, hey, we need to do more. We need to do more as a church. We need to do more as a nation, but we need to do more as individuals. A lot of times we'll look, and especially with the fact that our church supports so many missionaries, we'll say, well, we're good because we support missionaries, or our baptismal tank is, getting used a lot, or whatever you could say. Well, that's great. But what about myself individually? What am I doing personally to help move the cause for missions? What am I doing personally to help see souls saved? What is my personal relationship doing to propel and to move Jesus' name forward? That's what we should look at. And again, he had a conviction about that because so many things needed to be done, and he needed to do that. So let's go ahead and go to point number three. And that would be the commission of Jesus. The commission of Jesus. And looking at verse number 38, it says this, Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. So that last part especially. He will send forth laborers into his harvest. See, he himself, he exercised compassion, but he also commands to show us to show the same compassion. Again, why did Jesus come? Jesus came to save the lost, but he could have done that day one. He could have came instead of as a baby, instead of taking upon himself the form of a servant, instead of him going and getting the disciples together, instead of him doing all these miracles. He could have came as a man and went and died the death of the cross and took the sins for everybody and could have been done. Why did he not do that? Why was he on this earth for 33 years and for 33 and a half years and for 3.5 years as his earthly ministry? Why was he here? He was here to train disciples, and also to set the example for us. To set the example for us. There are so many times a lot of people will scratch their head. Why did Jesus have to get baptized? Why did Jesus pray? Why did Jesus have compassion? Why did Jesus weep? Because it's to show us what we need to do after. That's the idea. So he's showing us as an example, hey, this is how you ought to act. This is what you ought to do. And he's showing us those things by laying down that foundation. So that's what he does. So again, he shows the compassion himself, and then he's saying, hey, this is what you ought to do. This is what you ought to do. Send forth laborers. So it's a commission. It's a commission to pray, letter A. A commission to pray. All right. Brother Chris, if you grab those for me. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Were you here last week? Were you here last week? Okay, we're on point 3. We're continuing from that. Yep, no problem. This harvest is so important that we should not only engage ourselves, but we should pray for others to join us. Pray in this verse is translated from the Greek word diamai, which means to ask or beg. Even our prayers should have urgency. And I've mentioned this prayer a lot because once I read it, kind of in a different light, I really understood what Nehemiah was talking about. So I talk about Nehemiah's prayer a lot, and that's because in the book of Nehemiah, when Nehemiah is praying, and here's what happened, very much like this, Nehemiah understood there was a need, the wall was broken down, and more important, he saw that the people were broken down, so he had compassion for his people, which, by the way, he did not live near. He did not really know because he's been so removed from them, but he had such a heart and compassion for them. What did he want to do? Number one, he wanted to work, but before he put forth the work, what did he do? This is all Nehemiah 1. What did he do? He prayed. He prayed. And this is how he prayed. He said this to God, I beseech you. That word beseech, does anybody know what that word means? That word beseech means beg. Whoever said that, beg, yes. And that word means beg. I'm begging you. And he says this, bow down thine ear. He said, be attentive unto me. Here's what he's saying. God, pay attention. Pay attention to me. Please hear me. Why? Because I have a big prayer request. Now, what was his prayer request? Most people, if you were in Nehemiah's position, most people, their prayer request would be, God, rebuild the wall. That was not his prayer request. Here was his prayer request. God, give me favor when I talk to the king. Give me favor when I talk to the king. Nehemiah wasn't afraid to work. Nehemiah wanted an opportunity to work. Again, Nehemiah wasn't afraid to work. Nehemiah just wanted an opportunity to work. So again, pray. Pray. Oh man, this world, they don't want to hear it. They don't care. You love them, but they don't care about you. When's the last time you prayed about that? God, give me an opportunity with my boss. God, give me an opportunity with my family. I'll talk about him because he's not here, but man, the Smithers, they are soul winners. Every time you talk to them, they're talking about family members. They witness so much that their cousins do not speak to them anymore because of how much they witness. And you know what they say? If you're here on Wednesday, you should know, hey, can you pray? Pray for my cousins. They won't hear me anymore. Pray that they would understand. Thank you, sir. Pray that they would understand the gospel. Hey, they're continuing to pray. Hey, that's what we ought to do. That's what it should be. It's a commission to pray. This harvest is so important that we should not only engage ourselves, but we should pray for others to join us. That's, God, please give me an opportunity, and then God, please help others to get that same opportunity. Please help others to do that. Hey, we need people. We need you. but we also need others. And pray for those others to do that as well. And that's something that Jesus showed. His request was for laborers. His request was for more people to get involved with the gospel. And that's what we have to do. Has this request made it to your prayer list? Do you regularly beseech him to send more workers to the needy harvest fields of the world? Now, I'm not saying we need this, but I'm not saying that, yeah, of course, I always pray for missionaries. That's great. That's wonderful. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said this, and I believe in it with all my heart. Hey, we need missionaries. We need missionaries all around the world. But you know what we need? We need at least 100 more churches in the state of New Jersey. I would say 100 more churches in Essex County. We need churches because we have so many people. So I'm all for praying for the missions, praying for missionaries, praying for people to go to other places. But listen, we need people here. And when I say people, I'm not talking pastors. I'm talking just people that will go out and tell people about Jesus. That's what we need. We need workers. We need them here. We need them right here in New Jersey, right here in Essex County. We need them desperately. And your job is to be a part, but then also to help others be a part. How do you do that? Number one, you win people to the Lord. We're going to talk about a lot of this this afternoon. You'll win them to the Lord, and then they'll start coming, and then hopefully disciples making disciples. Again, you're going to hear some of this in the afternoon, but that's the idea. That's how you do it, and that's how he wants to set it up. So again, if you're not winning anybody, then the people you're not winning, they can't win anybody. So you need to go out and you need to be a witness so those people can get saved, and then you can help those people to show other people how to get saved, and then they can get saved. This is the first multi-level marketing strategy. You know, all those scams, they all got it from the Bible. But the Bible works because guess what? You'll never run out of clientele. That's what happens with the multi-level. They all run out of clientele, and the one person gets paid that's on the bottom. Nobody's getting paid here except for Jesus and them, the people who get saved. But again, that's what you ought to do. But we can't do that if we're not doing it ourselves. And then if you are doing it yourselves, we're not going to get more people if you don't pray. You need to pray. And then letter B, it is a commission to send. To send. Jesus' prayer is that more laborers will be sent into the fields. This means laborers who will go to every type of person in every type of environment, not just to the wealthy or to the influential, but also to the poor and downtrodden. Everyone needs to hear how they can be saved. And again, I would say in this area, I get way better results going to East Orange than I do going right here in Caldwell. I mean, way better results. In fact, I usually see somebody get saved almost every time I go to those areas. In Caldwell, I've yet to see somebody saved going door to door. I hardly get anybody to answer the door. Now, here's what could happen. It could be the opposite of this. Since we get a lot of good responses down in those areas, we'd rather go there than go to Caldwell. Where do you think the hardest place to be a missionary is? Anybody have any ideas? Shout them out. Where do you think the hardest place to be a missionary is? Go ahead. Shout out a country. Mexico, okay. Anybody else? Shout out a country. Pakistan, okay. Anywhere else? United States, that's a good one. China. Britain. England. Because they're rich. All these other places, incredibly easy, very dangerous. Pakistan, you could die. China, you could die. Mexico, you could die. But in the sense of reaching people, England, easily the hardest. In fact, when we have missionaries go, the Dice family is the only family that's still around. Everybody else that's in England, usually, they end up stopping after 5 years because they can't reach anybody. That's sad. Doesn't mean we don't go there, but again, a lot of times we would think it's these areas. Pakistan, the Africas, all that. No, they see amazing numbers. The missionary, we're online, so the missionary that's in Pakistan, and we even have one in China, their numbers are amazing. I mean, they're seeing a lot of people. Now again, the missionary in Pakistan, he's also had somebody murdered for that. So I'm not saying, danger-wise, But soul-wise, it's easy because they don't have anything. In China, these underground churches, they're booming. Why? Because they've never heard it before. They've never heard it before. That's why, it's such an important thing for us to understand that and to see that. North Korea, same thing. Underground, they're booming if they can get it. That's a thing. That's why, if you know a little bit about missionaries, Brian Johnson from the 1800s, he would smuggle in Bibles, and they would just be taken like that. He would have boats filled with Bibles, and they would be taken because they never had it. Now listen, we're in an area where everybody has it. They all understand it, and they don't want it. That does not mean that we don't do it. We have to do it. We have to go. Jesus said, hey, you have to go. Last time I checked, labor means work. It means work. It's not going to be easy, but it's necessary. It's necessary to go to the places where it's easy. It's necessary to go to the places that's hard. Paul said this, preach the word, be instant in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort. And here's what he's saying. Hey, when it's easy, preach. When it's hard, preach. When everybody wants to hear it, preach. When nobody wants to hear it, preach. Why? Because that's your job, to send out that love. Because if you care for these people, you'll do it. Hey, if there's a fire, doesn't matter if it's a big fire or it's a little fire. If it's your family in there, you're going to get your family out because you love them. And that's why you're going to do it. Well, Jude says, some have compassion, making a difference. Others saving with fear. And it's talking about the idea of a fire. You'll get them out. So again, we have to go. Before Christ left, he gave a final command to his disciples. If somebody would read Mark 16:15, it's right there in the sheet for you, or you can read it from your Bible, but anybody just go ahead and start reading that for me. Mark 16:15.
And he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
We are to bring the gospel to every person on earth. Obviously, this includes our own community. We must never be bashful about sharing the gospel with those we know, and we must never neglect to see out those in our community who we don't know, but who need Christ. We should invite all who are lost to Christ, and we should do it with urgency, which our message deserves. And again, understanding this, it says this, both in Jerusalem and Samaria and the uttermost parts. Now, here's where we are right now. This is our Jerusalem. This is our Jerusalem. I know not everybody here lives in Caldwell, but Caldwell would be our Jerusalem. But Caldwell, Roseland, Verona, this area, even, the Oranges, East Hanover, this is our Jerusalem. Outside of Essex County, that would be Samaria, other parts of New Jersey. And then the uttermost parts of the world. That would be everywhere else. But here's what he says. You need to focus on each area. You need to focus on your Jerusalem. And then we also need to focus on Samaria, New Jersey, Northeast, America if you want, and then the uttermost parts of the earth. But there has to be focus on every single one of these areas. If not, then we're going to be in trouble. And the gospel's not going to be preached to its full potential as it should. And that's something that we have to understand. If somebody would go to Luke 14, verse 23, if it's on there, great. If not, okay. Somebody other than Paul.
And the Lord said unto the servant, go out to the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled.
And again, here's what he's saying. He's not saying next door. He's saying go out in the highways and the hedges. That's why our Jerusalem and even our Samaria, it's not just your neighbors. Hey, I've talked to my neighbors. That's not enough. I've literally talked to my neighbors. But that's not enough. I have to talk to all these people. So here's what this is. This is a story of somebody having a party, and I think I talked about this last week, but somebody having a party and their guests didn't come. So they go to the servants and they say, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out into the highways and the hedges, and I want you to tell everybody there's this amazing party. But here's what he says. He doesn't say this. He doesn't say this is how the servant's supposed to go. Hey, there's a party. You want to come? No? Okay, sorry. Hey, you want to come to this party? No? Okay. No. It says compel. Compel. You know what compel means? Compel means borderline beg. It means to persuade. It means with urgency. Here's what it means. Hey, the king or my master, he's having this party. Hey, do you want to come? No, I'm busy. Hey, can you cancel your plans? You're going to miss it. This is an amazing party. Hey, you got to come. Ah, man, dude, I'm really busy. I understand you're busy. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We don't usually go to this section, but we're coming here. I mean, the food's going to be amazing. The entertainment's going to be amazing. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hey, can you really come? I'm coming all the way from down that part of the town to come to you. Hey, can you please come? Can you please make it? That's the type of urgency that they're showing. Now, when it comes to telling people about Jesus, we usually do, can I invite you out to church? No? Okay, thank you. And again, Jesus showed that as well. I'm not saying that that's absolutely the wrong way. Jesus said that when people shut the door, he moved to the next town. In fact, he said when somebody kicks dirt on you, just wipe it off and go to the next place. So I'm not saying you be combative, but you also don't be apathetic. You don't just say, hey, you want to come? No, okay, bye. You could push a little bit. Again, you don't want to be divisive. But, I'm okay. Well, here, just read it. I got plenty of them. Because that's what a lot of people say. No, I'm good. Why don't you save for somebody else? I got plenty, man. Don't worry about it. I got a church you go to. A lot of people would stop right there. Hey, how many of you know this? Just because you go to church doesn't make you a Christian, right? We know that. How many of you are from a different church, right? And we got saved because of the doctrine from that other church wasn't right. So just because somebody goes to church doesn't mean that they're saved, just because if you live in a garage doesn't make you a car. So we got to push a little bit. Hey, compel. And that's what he's saying. Sharing the gospel doesn't end next door. If we are to bring it to every person, we must send others to share the gospel in places that we will never go. That's why starting other churches is so important. Missions is so important. That's why, the people that we've sent out here, whether it be Craig Ledbetter or the missionary in Pakistan or the shorts in Malaysia, that's so important and that's so vital. But listen, we need to do our part and we need to do what we can. Acts 1:8 says this, but ye shall receive power. After that, the Holy Ghost has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me. Again, here's where it is, both in Jerusalem and in all of Judea, and in Samaria, and in the uttermost parts of the world. I forgot about Judea. That's right. I was like, I know I'm missing one. Jerusalem is this area. Judea is New Jersey. Samaria is America. Uttermost parts of the world is everywhere else. I knew I was missing something. So there it is. So again, how do we do that? How can we share the gospel in all those areas? By missions. By actually, having other churches. That's why, if you've ever gone to the men's retreat or Quad State Sunday School Conference, you see a lot of other churches in this area represented. Well, they're sharing the gospel in their area. I know right now as I'm teaching that, the church in Kearney with Matt Sikowski, he's teaching. The church in Clifton with Brother Dingus, he's teaching. Brother Preem in Edison, he's teaching. Solid Rock, my home church, they're teaching. Well, what does that mean? In all these areas, they're able to still get the gospel out. And we're all able to do it simultaneously. Brother Craig Ledbetter, I don't know what time they start with the time difference, but either he taught or he's going to be teaching. And those things are happening. Why? Because of the power of missions, of church planting. But again, we need to do our part. We need to do what we can do. And here's what we can do. We can do our part by winning people, but we can do our part by praying. By praying. That's why every Wednesday, most of us who are here know this, but every Wednesday we have a different continent, which is amazing that we can do that, but we have a different continent usually represented for those missionaries. So we have about 20 to 25 missionaries, and they're on that side. Why do we put them on that side? Why do we read Missionary Minute and all of those things that we do? Because we want people to know about these missionaries because, yes, we're able to help them financially, and that's a big part of you all helping, but also so we could pray for them. We need to pray for these people. That's what Jesus said. He said, pray ye therefore to the Lord of the harvest. He said, pray. And we could pray, and that's such a vital part of that. Pray financially, pray for them, and then also financially support by giving to missions, and that's a big part because they're doing that. But through Christ's only prayer request, we gain a deep glimpse into the compassion of the heart of God. What moved him to ask for prayer? It wasn't his personal needs. It wasn't an urgent harvest of people with eternal soul. It was an urgent harvest of people with eternal souls. Through this prayer request, we also gain a personal commission to pray for more laborers and carry the gospel to the lost. And that's something that we have to see and we have to understand moving forward. It's all wrapped into compassion. It's all wrapped into our heartbeat. Conclusion. Christ's compassion was stirred by the needs of people. He saw past the external and he recognized the eternal needs of their souls. He knew they needed salvation. There is only two types of people in this world. It is not rich and poor. It is not healthy and unhealthy. It's not nice and unnice. It's not America and everybody else. It's not you fill in the blank. Here's what it is. It's saved and lost. Saved and lost. That's it. When you can get that understanding and you can get that mindset of whatever person it could be, and in America in 2026, chances are when you run into people on the street, chances are they're on their way to hell. Not every time. I've run into some people and they say, hey man, this is awesome, I'm saved and all that. That's great, and that's what you want to see. And you know what you'll see what'll happen when you get that? That'll encourage you. That'll encourage you that this whole world isn't going to hell. That's awesome. But here's what we have to understand. Everyone has an eternity. So how are you going to approach that person? Again, it doesn't matter what this world brings. There's so many people that live a good life in the sense of they got money in the bank, they may have notoriety or fame or all those things. That doesn't really matter in the glimpse of eternity. It honestly doesn't even matter a lot of times even in their life right now, as you see with a lot of people who end up killing themselves and taking drugs and excess and all those things because they thought that they would get pleasure and satisfaction from these things and they did not get it and they need something else and they go elsewhere. Tom Brady, he did an interview years ago and he talked about that very thing. If you don't know who Tom Brady is, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, one of the most famous as well. And at the time, he was married to a supermodel wife, and he had kids, he had the house, he had, at that time, probably 4 or 5 Super Bowls. He was already renowned as one of the greatest, and all of those things. He had so much going for him. And he did an interview, and here's what he said. He said, I thought that I would be, fulfilled, but I'm just like, God, what else? And he wasn't saying God like he was asking. He was using God's name as a curse word. But that's exactly what he needs. Now, you kind of see his story. If you know a little bit about him, his story is a little different now where you're seeing some things are falling apart. His marriage is over. I don't know how his relationship with his kids are or anything. And now he doesn't have sports anymore and he's thrown into other things and he's doing good with that. But again, his marriage is over and there's some issues going on. But here's what it is. He thought marrying a supermodel would bring him satisfaction. He thought winning would bring him satisfaction. He thought that all these things would bring him satisfaction. But guess what? It did not, because people still need something. They don't know what it is, but we do. And that's our job to show them. There's poor people, and they need it as well. But just because they're poor doesn't mean that they need it less, and just because they're rich doesn't mean that they need it less. We all need it equally. And we need to bring that to those people. We need to do our part. If we don't do our part and bring the gospel to people, then we're not doing our part in the commission. Again, it's with compassion. How do you have a heart like God? How do you have that key? How do you have the key of loving like Jesus? By having compassion for people. Jesus all the time stopped what he was doing and took time and dealt with people personally because he knew what was going on in their lives. You think he wasn't busy? You think he didn't know he only had a short time on this earth to do what he had to do? And he still stopped what he was doing and went to people in their need. Why? Compassion. Compassion. That's what we ought to do, and that's what we're supposed to do. The most famous verse in the Bible beautifully expresses the compassion of Christ, and that's John 3:16. I know most of us would know it, most of us could quote it, but it's for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And that's love. God loved us so much that he sent his Son to willingly die on the cross. Why? For you. For you, because he knew you couldn't do it. That's him giving the ultimate sacrifice. Hey, I think we could give a little bit. We can give of our time. We can give of our schedule. We can give of our finances. Why? Because people need the Lord. What would the fruit of compassion look like in your life this week? Would you take Christ's prayer request seriously? Would you take that seriously and faithfully pray for laborers for the harvest? Would you today say, I'll become a laborer in the harvest? These are things that you can do. Would you develop the discernment to see people through the compassionate eyes of Jesus? If you've been here on Wednesdays, we've been going through the book of Philippians. And there, what have we been saying? We've been saying that Paul doesn't view things the way that we do in our lives. The things that are happening to us, the things that, may be good or bad. He views things through the lens of the gospel. So Paul was writing the book of Philippians in jail. Paul has been beaten. Paul has been thrown aside. Paul has been shipwrecked, all these things. And it was such a big thing to the church of Philippi where they actually took up a love offering, sent him money while he was in jail. He wrote them back, very thankful that they did that. He could use the money, and he used it, and that was great. But he also said, hey, I'm talking for Paul here, but I feel like he probably thought they were feeling bad for him. And he said this, hey, don't feel bad for me. He said, all these things that have happened, guess what's happened through that? People have been getting saved. He said, the gospel's been going forward. Here's what Paul's been teaching us. Don't look at things through the lens of ourselves and, things aren't going good because my life doesn't seem to be going good. View it through the lens of the gospel. And when Paul was doing that, guess what he was saying? He was saying things are great. And then he took them through the eyes of Jesus and said, look at Christ, who in the form of God thought it robbery to be equal with God, made himself of no reputation, and took upon himself the form of a servant. He said, hey, Jesus did that and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. He said Jesus became a servant for us. Here's why. So he could reach people. So he says this to us, let's do the same thing. Let's do the same thing. Hey, would you exercise that compassion by personally meeting the needs of others, both physically and spiritually? Maybe even financially, whatever it could be? Because Jesus was obsessed with others. You and I have benefited from the compassion of Christ. We have forgiveness of sins, peace with God, and a promised future in heaven. But how might we share that compassion with others who don't know Christ? How can we do that? Here's how. By going. By going and sharing the gospel. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. If you don't have a heart for it, you won't be able to do it. I remember when we first started RU here, it was me and Brett, ground crew right here. Me and Brett, a couple other people, but basically it was just me and Brett. And he's never been to our RU before, obviously, because we never had one. Well, we had one for like a week here, but he didn't know how it all ran and all that. And we had some other people that were coming. And I said, well, before we do it, I want to make sure that they kind of know how it goes. So before we did it, I wanted to go to another church that had one. So I found a group of churches that had them around here. And there was a church about 15 minutes away. church most of you probably, well, maybe you may not have heard of, but a church I've heard of and know and respect. And I talked to the person and I said, hey, you're having RU still? They said, yeah. And I told them who I was. I said, I'm starting one, but I'd like to have, a meeting with you because maybe I want to meet with you for a little bit, just so, the people that are coming, they can get an idea for it. And I met with that person and he said, well, I'm not running it right now because that he was having custody battle with his kid, so he wasn't doing it anymore. So he had somebody else running it. So both of them were in the meeting with me. And we're there and we're sitting there. And again, this church is about 10 to 20 minutes away from here, so it would have been good in the sense of distance. And I'm talking to that person that took it over. And I said, well, what led you to take it over? And they said, well, when they needed an usher, I said I'd do it. When they needed a bus driver, I got my CDL, I said I'd do it. When they needed a Sunday school helper, I said I'd do it. And when there was an open for this RU thing, I just said I'd do it. And right when he told me that, I already made the decision I'm not coming to this RU. Not saying that it wouldn't work, but I know this, if you don't have a heart for it, it won't work as it should. So I just made a decision. I said, I'm not going to go there. I'm not talking ill of them. They still have it. I think somebody else runs it now, and it's going beautifully. But I said, I'm not going to do that. In fact, what we ended up doing, and Brother Brett can attest to this, we drove 45 minutes out, going there, and then at 9:30 at night, 45 minutes back, and heading to Somerset because the person who ran that had a heart for it. He had addictions and he had some struggles, and we went there and we became kind of a little part of that and got connected, and it kind of stunk when we left. I mean, I really loved that place. But again, what am I saying? I'm saying this. Hey, I want to go somewhere where they have a heart for it. Hey, I appreciate that guy saying, hey, if there's a need, I'll step up. But you have to have a heart for addictions. Well, ideally, it would be nice if you went through addictions, but again, you don't even have to go through it, but you have to have a heart for it in order to really do something. And here's what we see here. We see Jesus is saying the only way that people are going to get reached is if we have a heart for it. Hey, listen, you've been saved. I'm looking around this room, and there's different variations of when people got saved. Some people got saved a few years back. Some people got saved a few decades back. It does not matter. What matters is, where is your compassion for people? Sometimes the longer we get saved, the longer removed, the less compassion we have. Hey, it ought not to be that. Ought not to be that. We ought to be compassionate. We ought to have a heart like Jesus. How do you have a heart like Jesus? By having actions like Jesus. What did Jesus do? He showed up. He showed up, he gave his time, he gave his energy, and he told people of a better life. We have that right here. Again, cheap plug, but Sunday afternoon, we're going through that. We're going through how to give the gospel. How do we go if we don't know? I'm going to give a lot of practical tips on how to do that. So maybe you've never done it. Maybe it scares you to death. Well, start showing up to that. That can help develop you. But again, we need people to work. We need laborers. Jesus could have did it himself. He's God. He didn't do that. He said he needed us. We need to do our part. All right. Any questions on any of that? I know that was a little preachy as well, but any questions with any of that? All right. All right. We'll close in prayer, and then we'll be dismissed, and we'll be back here in about 20 minutes. Lord, thank you for today. And God, I pray that you would be with us now. I pray that you'd help us to understand our need for people, our need for the gospel, our need to love the lost, love the saved, restore the broken. And God, please help us love like Jesus, making a difference, saving with fear, whatever it is. I pray that we would do it. But Lord, I pray that we would have compassion. That's the difference maker. I pray that we'd make a difference by having compassion, and we'd be moved by compassion. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. You are dismissed for a little bit. We'll see you in about 20 minutes.